When I first bought my mountain cabin, I thought it was going to be my quiet escape from the chaos of city life. Nestled between tall pines overlooking a crystal-clear lake and tucked down a winding gravel road that very few people ever used, it was the perfect hideaway. The cabin was on land that had belonged to my grandfather, and after he passed, I decided to renovate it into a retreat where I could fish, read, and recharge without having neighbors breathing down my neck. But of course, peace never lasts long when there's a homeowners association anywhere in sight. My cabin technically wasn't in their jurisdiction. It sat just outside the HOA boundary line, but the HOA president, a woman everyone in town called Karen, acted like she owned the entire mountain. She had rules about where people could park, how tall your grass could grow, even what color curtains were acceptable. She'd find her own neighbors for things like planting the wrong flowers or leaving wind chimes out overnight. And unfortunately, she had decided that my cabin was her business too. At first, it was little things. She would drive her SUV up the gravel path that led to my cabin and tell me my deck. Furniture didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic she warned me about. Keeping my woodpile too close to the tree line, as if I were part of her HOA, I brushed her off and reminded her every time. I'm not in your HOA. You don't control this land. That always set her jaw tight, and I knew she hated hearing it. But one weekend, things escalated to a whole new level. I had driven up Friday night with a truckload of groceries and supplies. I planned to stay the week, enjoy some fishing, and work remotely from the cabin. As I rounded the final curve of the gravel road, I hit the brakes hard. There, right in front of my cabin's driveway. Blocking the only entrance was Karen's enormous luxury SUV. She had parked it diagonally across the gravel path, making it completely impossible for me to pull my truck into the property. I got out furious. I checked around to see if maybe she had left a note, but of course nothing. Just her car, sitting there like a deliberate blockade. My phone buzzed, and I saw I had a message. It was from an unknown number, but the tone gave her away instantly. Maybe now you'll learn the rules of the neighborhood. Your cabin is an eyesore, and until you agree to follow HOA standards, you won't have access. Consider this a lesson. I stood there in shock. She had actually taken it upon herself to block me from my own cabin. It wasn't just rude. It was illegal. But Karen had this smug way of thinking the law bent to her will at first. I thought about just calling the sheriff's office, but then I remembered how Karen bragged about being friends with half the county officials. Sure, I could report her for trespassing and blocking my property, but she'd find a way to weasel out of it or drag things into endless small-town bureaucracy. That's when an idea half insane, half brilliant flashed across my mind. See, I had a buddy named Rick. Rick was an old Army pilot who now ran a private helicopter charter service in the area. He specialized in scenic tours and the occasional heavy lift contract for construction crews. If anyone could help me deal with this situation in a way Karen would never forget, it was Rick. I called him, explained the situation. And after a moment of stunned silence, he burst out laughing. You want me to airlift her SUV? You've lost your mind, but honestly, I'm in. Where do you want it dropped? That's when the plan truly took shape. I told Rick exactly where to put it: the governor's mansion lawn. Our state governor had a reputation for hating HOA overreach and had publicly spoken against predatory fines. The image of Karen's SUV sitting smack in the middle of the governor's pristine front lawn was too poetic to resist. Rick agreed, mostly for the fun of it. Saturday morning, the operation was set. Rick flew in early, his helicopter's blades chopping the cool mountain air. He brought along heavy-duty straps and a harness rig that could handle a vehicle lift. I guided him to the site where Karen's SUV still sat like a smug roadblock. Man, she's asking for it, Rick muttered, shaking his head. We worked quickly. Strapping the harness around the frame of her SUV, Rick double-checked the weight capacity, then fired up the rotors. Slowly, the massive vehicle began to rise. First, its tires lifted off the gravel, then the entire SUV dangled beneath the helicopter like a toy. My heart pounded as I watched it swing upward, the sound of the engine echoing through the forest. Within minutes, Rick and her SUV were dots in the sky, headed straight for the state capitol. Meanwhile, I made myself comfortable at the cabin. For the first time, I had complete access without Karen breathing down my neck. I grilled some steaks, fished by the lake, and even set up my hammock on the porch. I didn't know how quickly word would spread, but I suspected it wouldn't take long. Sure enough, by that afternoon, my phone blew up with calls and messages. The first was from Karen herself, shrieking through the phone. "Where is my car? I know you did this. You're finished. Do you know who I am?" I calmly replied, "Check the governor's lawn. You'll find it there." Her silence on the other end was golden. Then came the screaming, pure, furious disbelief. By Sunday, the story was everywhere. Local news ran headlines like, "Mysterious SUV, dropped on governor's mansion, lawn helicopter involved." Reporters speculated it was some kind of political stunt. But the governor himself held a press conference where he seemed amused. Standing in front of cameras, he said, "I don't know who decided to gift trap this SUV for me, but let me just say this: HOAs think they can control everything, even outside their boundaries. If this is someone's way of protesting that, well," message received. The crowd laughed. I nearly fell off my porch chair watching the live broadcast. Karen, however, was not laughing. She stormed up to my cabin on Monday morning, red-faced and shaking. She pointed a finger at me like a dagger. "You've ruined me. The governor knows my name now. The whole state knows my SUV. You are going to jail for this stunt." I leaned on the porch railing, completely calm. "Actually, Karen, you should be careful. You blocked access to my property and trespassed. That's illegal. And if you keep threatening me, I might have to file charges." Her face went pale. She realized for the first time that she wasn't the one holding all the cards. She stormed off, muttering curses, but she didn't park near my cabin again. The aftermath was better than I ever imagined. HOA members from her own neighborhood, embarrassed by the news coverage, called an emergency meeting. Within a month, Karen was voted out as president. She tried to run again, but no one would back her. The SUV debacle had made her a laughingstock. As for me, I became something of a local legend. People at the general store would nod and grin when I walked in. "That's the guy who helicoptered the HOA queen's car," they'd whisper. I didn't confirm or deny anything, but the smirk on my face said enough, Rick. Meanwhile, picked up a ton of new business after the stunt. Everyone wanted the pilot who had airlifted the HOA president's car. He joked that he should put it on his business cards. Looking back, it was a crazy plan that could have gone wrong in 100 ways. But in the end, it worked perfectly. Karen never bothered me again. The governor made a public statement about cracking down on overreaching HOAs, and I got to enjoy my cabin in peace, exactly the way my grandfather intended. Sometimes, you don't fight fire with fire. Sometimes you fight Karen with a helicopter. This story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey,